Mayor Van Gordon, this webinar is now being recorded.
Thank you. I'm going to call the Springfield City Council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Councilors Moe.
Here.
Rodley.
Here.
Scher.
Here.
Woodrow.
Here.
And Pictionary.
Here.
And it looks like we have one item tonight, which is the council vacancy process, and it's Nancy Newton and Mary Bridget Smith.
Good evening, Council, Mayor and Council. It's Mary Bridget. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, I'm here tonight to start the presentation on the council vacancy process. So I was hoping to have a conversation with the council tonight, and the mayor focused on process. I have a few specific items I was hoping to get your feedback on. One was public outreach efforts. The second is the next step in the process, which I think in the fall you had talked about doing an interview, an in-person interview with the candidates. And then the third, if we have time and you'd like to talk about it, or if you have questions, how we could approach voting when it comes to the time to appoint. Just want to say before we get going on those specific items, just as a factual summary, I believe you received 8 applications. They're in your packet. And you know, this is a different appointment than, for example, your recent work in appointing a city manager. It's not an employee, it's a purely political appointment. So it has different sort of rules with it. I guess I would say less structure. In order to avoid liability and give legitimacy to the process, I think really the things to be thinking about are a consistent, fair process for each candidate. So just keep that in mind as we work through. The first thing I wanted to talk about was public outreach. The council has made importance on being able to reach out to members of the public for this process. So we've talked about it a little bit on a staff level and just wanted to let you know the direction that we're looking at and then get your feedback. I think step one is putting the applications on a more prominent place in our website. They're part of your packet tonight, so technically you could find them if you went through our website, but I think to get them in a more prominent area would probably be helpful. And then the second part of that is reaching out to the public and encouraging them to provide input on the candidates. And what we were thinking was using social media as a way to direct folks to CMO email address, providing input at public meetings, the upcoming public meetings, and then individual counselors' email. Social media, as you know, can be a really good way to get the word out in the community, but it would be hard to take those comments about candidates on social media without creating a public meeting issue or a public records issue. So that is our plan, to use the same graphics, same information, and now just be asking, hey, we have these candidates, please provide input, and here's how you do it, and try and make that as easy as we can for folks. We do have some time scheduled upcoming February 16th, which is a regular meeting night, and then February 22nd is a work session only night, but then March 1st is a regular meeting night. So there should be some opportunity for folks to be at a city council meeting, and then they could of course always send emails and we can make that part of the record. So that's the plan on public outreach, unless councilors have questions or additional items they would like to see.
I have a question.
Councilor Woodrow.
My concern is that not everybody out there is connected with social media.
Okay.
So I'm concerned about the fairness involved with the members of the community that are not hooked up to social media. There's ones out there that can't even connect to our council meetings because they don't have Zoom or they don't have, you know, connection possibilities. And I am concerned that that's not a sense of fairness for the entire community to be involved. And if it turns out that way, then I would be more inclined to not do any outreach.
Okay. Would it have, so are you thinking we need a method for folks to send in like mailed comments or handwritten comments or drop off at the city hall, something like that?
something. I'm very concerned. We've encountered it in the past with previous issues of trying to get the public to get the information, and we're stuck at the moment. I don't think we've gotten to the point of where we have a good system or a good means of doing it. But I am concerned that that we don't reach, it's very difficult to reach people with information like that if they're not looking for it, if they're not, I mean, people, our active people that are following our council meetings and stuff know what's coming, and they know what to look for, and they know to be aware of it. But there's a lot of our people out there in the community that would not know right away to pay attention to when something's going to be available, when it's going to go on the website or that kind of thing. And so I'm just very concerned that we figure out a way to incorporate those people.
Okay, and definitely, I hear you saying, like, don't rely too much on social media. So maybe 2 media advisories and letting people know when City Hall is open, and then they can bring in comments that way. Yeah,
or the media notices that would go out and let people know that those are even going on the website if we're looking for feedback. But okay. I just think it's important that we expand beyond as active as social media might be. I think it's really important that we reach out. I mean, I'm one of those people. If I didn't have the city iPad, I would not be able to go on Zoom with anything. So sure. I'm one of those people that sits out there that is limited. If I weren't on city council with an iPad that we could get Zoom. So I just think it's really important to be able to reach out to those people.
Okay, understood.
I have Councilor Rodley, then I'll have Tish.
So I really appreciate what Councilor Woodrow said, because I also was thinking maybe we need to do a little additional. Is there a way to just include it in your public notices as you notice the meetings? Could it just be expanded in that what goes into the Register Guard, and maybe a public notice that goes in the Chronicle, or something that's that way, so that we're at least getting it into the press, which perhaps people who don't have social media or people who are older might be more likely to see it. So I wonder if it's just a way to add that onto that in terms of that. And then my second piece was that in addition to inviting people to comment, I don't know what the logistics are around it, but it would be nice if we just, whatever we decide tonight in terms of what the interview process looks like, to invite residents to share questions if they have specific questions. We might not be able to use them all, but it would be another way to engage folks if there are questions. If we post what questions we decide on and people are like, well, I really care about this, that might be something that we could find a way to include in it as well.
Okay. I think definitely to your first point about public notice or notice in the RG, I think that's doable. I know for the council vacancy, I can remember hearing advertisements on the radio, as a way to get out to folks. And so I'll talk with Amber about that. That seems like that could be something that could be done. On the second question, in terms of inviting questions, I think that makes sense to me. I got to think a little bit more how to do that, but I can see what you're saying. Like, what would you like to know about a potential future counselor? Are there questions or information you would like to know? Yeah, okay, I can look at those.
Ish.
I completely concur with Councilor Woodrow. Is contrary to popular belief, social media is not the majority of the public. And that I am a firm believer that that's what the voting process is. And this particular appointment is not a voting process. I am all about and all for public being involved, but I think that through the voting process, it goes to all the residences, and it goes to those people that can make, it goes to the majority in all of registered voters. So it gives all the registered voters a direct input as to who will be on council or even mayor. And I think that there's a lot of energy behind this, and that's great. And I've already gotten feedback in regards to some of the applicants already. But this is a council decision, and that the public has voted each of us on the council for making these decisions, and that a vote will go to the public when the time is correct. And it allows everyone to have their input. In regards to questions from the public, I think, you know, it's a good idea, but I think it would be nearly impossible to have that fair in regards to, for example, there's rules when it comes to applicants. If you have a question of an applicant, then it needs to be applied to every single applicant, not one. And that I can just imagine that even if we had 3 applicants and we took questions from the public, we will be here till next summer. So I would like to, you know, I acknowledge everything that's being said, and I totally appreciate that, but I'm trying to keep this in context, and I'm trying to give everybody the same weight, and giving more weight to one group than the other, I think is not fair to the applicants. So anyway, that's just my thoughts, and I think the current process that we have going through our questions is more than adequate. I think I don't have a problem with if we get people that are asking questions and we see something that's bubbling up to the top, to look at adding that to our questions, but taking away some other question or something, so we can have some balance, and not realizing that we have to ask each candidate that the same questions. So anything we add to is going to really compound our process. Just keeping that in mind.
Leonard?
Thanks, John. Yeah, I agree with Councilor Woodrow that the playing field gets tilted by only allowing input through social media. I do think that we should err on the side of more inclusion of the public in this process. I think up until now, we've arguably not included the public enough in this process, and I think we can start to correct it by welcoming public input. I think, you know, I can't really say that I've put my finger on exactly how we should welcome public input. I think allowing it in writing or by email would be welcomed for sure. I don't really, but I do definitely think that we should have a period that includes public testimony and input.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I'm going to add one quick thought here, and then I'll let Marilee go. I think the issue is what we can actually successfully execute. Right, the more moving parts that we have, the harder it is to actually administer an interview process that's sort of fair to everybody. And I want to just caution everybody that, like, we want the public to be involved. We want their feedback to be involved, but I think we don't want, like, we want to be kind of clear with the public that we should approach this not as a pseudo election, but, you know, we do have to make the appointment here, and just encouraging people to give us input by email or phone call or written, you know, should be enough. And then if we have something that we want to bring up, then we can bring it to the table and kind of go from there. But I just think the idea of soliciting questions is just going to make this way too complicated. Marilee?
Yes, I think we have to be cautious of the amount of weight we put on the public input, because we don't know exactly how good the outreach may be in getting out to the entire community or getting people to be involved. I think we have to be careful the amount of weight we put on that input that comes in. I agree that I think I would like to see us look towards the future, and I'm with Leonard in figuring out a good way to get that input on a more consistent and more complete way to get that done, to have more. But I'm concerned that we don't have the outreach part figured out to the point of where we could put a whole lot of weight on the input we get, because we don't know that we're getting a complete picture. So I think it's important to get it, but I personally will not put a whole lot of weight on it. The interviews and the people's responses, the candidates' responses, are going to get my weight. You know, just from that standpoint, is I don't think that with the input, I don't think if it can't do a cross section of the community, then then it lessens its impact a little bit.
All right. I don't see anybody else, Mary Bridget.
Okay, well, I think this has been helpful. I hear you on not just relying on social media, allowing a way for folks to submit written comments either by mail or bringing them in, and then noted media notices as well. So we can definitely do that for sure. Okay. Okay, so then next topic would be the interview, and just confirming that that would be what folks would want to do for the next part of the process. Attachment 2 in your packet is some draft interview questions. You know, just to talk a little bit about, before we dive into specific questions, you know, format wise, clearly this would be a remote, like Zoom or, you know, type of interview, similar to your boards and commissions interviews. So there would be a set list of questions that people would be asked. People would be asked the same question. Want to think about, you have 8 folks if you want to interview everybody, or make a decision about narrowing down or how long you want those interviews to be. As I said, we have time set aside in your next 2 meetings to address this, and we can further adjust the schedule depending on your direction. You know, one thing you do for boards and commissions interviews is that each counselor asks a question. You know, it's sort of like you all go around, and, you know, when you used to go around a table, that was kind of flowed a little easier. One thing you can think about is do that same format, or you could look at maybe we ask less questions with the opportunity for more discussion and comment and follow-up questions instead of doing all 6. So, you know, it's really up to you in terms of how you want to format these. And I will tell you that in looking at these questions, they are sample questions that you've used in vacancies before. So there's nothing particularly magic about them. So if you want to change something, there's no problem. There is a question that we left off inadvertently about sort of the relationship between staff and council and how people see that. We asked planning commissioners that question. That might be something you want to look into. And you might want to take this opportunity to either build on what was asked in the written applications or kind of go the other direction and try and get some other questions. So I'm happy to take any direction you have about the way you'd like the interview to go and the types of questions.
Marilee.
Just one comment before we delve into the questions. When we were doing questions earlier and we were doing it online in the virtual meetings, we had one counselor ask this whole set of questions. Then we moved to the next counselor that asked all the questions of the next candidate. I think that went really smooth to do it that way, rather than hopping around from counselor to counselor, just having one counselor ask the questions of one candidate and then move on. It seemed to go smoother and it seemed to be more efficient doing it that way. Just my thoughts. And like I said, that's before we delve into the questions.
Okay, that's right. I remember that now. So one counselor would ask all the questions for one interviewee. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
It seemed to be more efficient and it was less choppy.
Ish.
I agree, Councilor Woodrow, very much so from an organizational perspective, from administering the meetings and running the meetings. It sure worked really well from when I was doing that. And it actually seemed as though we had considerably less downtime, so to speak, when there was no real transition between each one, so to speak. And I like it. I think it worked really well. I've been doing this a long time, and I think for the first time, it wasn't so burdensome to run a bunch of interviews.
Yes.
I definitely would think we would want to get down to a much shorter list of questions, given the amount of people that we are interviewing. And I do concur that we should add the question about relationship between the city council staff and city manager, because I think that's at the cornerstone of what we do. Leonard?
Yeah, I see a couple of philosophical questions here, like for instance, the advantages of being elected citywide as opposed to by ward. I would say that's one of the less essential questions that we're asking here. There are also a couple that I would see as more or less duplicative. How do you define success, and what are your greatest achievements? You know, that kind of thing. I think that what we could do is take the similar questions and then boil two down into one in several instances. I think we could get it down to 6 or 7 questions without any problem.
Joe?
I agree with Counselor Steer. I think that question 10 is I mean, it's a nice question, but again, it's pretty broad. And one person's great achievement can be completely way off base from another person. One person can say, you know, I raised a family. That's my greatest achievement versus, you know, I built a 20-story building. I mean, it kind of, to me, doesn't really matter. You know, that just to me is real inside of them and not necessarily real beneficial for the public and or the city. But I do think too that, and I agree with philosophically what you're saying, those other questions I could do without them. Those other two that Leonard mentioned. And yeah, I think we can scratch probably 3 out of there pretty easily.
Yeah. Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Could we go one by one through the questions and see if anybody feels like we can get rid of it or keep it and just go down through the list?
I think that would be a really good idea.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Are you ready?
Yep.
Fire them at us.
Okay, first question. Now it's like I'm interviewing you. Okay, so what are the primary reasons? First question, what are the primary reasons for your interest in the Ward 1 City Council position? And I would note this is a little similar to a question on the written application.
That's okay. We still need to hear them say it.
Okay.
So
Or
Leonard,
keep it.
It's a very basic question. Keep it.
Keep.
yeah.
Okay. Number 2, unique abilities or experiences you would bring to the council.
Keep.
Keep.
I like it.
Okay, that sounds like keep to me.
Could I suggest maybe thinking about? Yeah, I agree with keeping it. And there was one that was sort of similar to it further along. Okay, never mind. Let's keep it.
You're interrupting the list,
Yeah,
Leonard.
I know. Yeah, that's so much for our momentum, right?
We're only on 2, Leonard.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, how do you define success and how do you know when you are successful?
I would dump that one.
I would too. I would dump it too.
Okay, so 3's off the island.
Okay, 3's voted off. Okay. Number 4, when faced with a complex problem with multiple solutions, what process would you use to select the best solution to the problem?
Keep.
Keep.
Keep, okay. I'm making head nods.
Okay. Number 5, what do you like best about Springfield and why?
I've seen some keeps, some people shaking their heads. What are you guys?
Yeah, I see. I think it's a keep.
Could we hold
Yeah.
that one in advance? I mean,
Sure.
just
Sure.
figure out later whether it duplicates another one.
Sure.
Okay, we'll come back to 5. Number 6, if there are 3 things in Springfield you are permitted to do, whether it be to add, eliminate, or change anything, what would those be?
Good question.
Keep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's a keep.
Yeah, keep, and I think that it might actually go to what they're asking and or what we're asking in question 5 too. But let's go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so now we're on 7. What have you done to further your vision for Springfield?
I think we could combine 5 and 7. What do you like best about Springfield and what have you done to further your vision of Springfield? I think we could do it. I think put the 2 together.
And see, I would totally dump number 7. Because I think it kind of touches on a number 6. So I would keep 5 and dump 7, but
So let's
throw down for it.
maybe we can leave 7 on the cutting block for right now and see what else with 5 and come back to them.
Sure.
Joe.
5 and 7
I
are
would-
in the parking
I
lot.
was just, yeah, I was going to agree with Corey. I think that we could probably dump 7 pretty easily. And you know, that'll probably come out pretty quickly when it comes to question number 6.
Okay. Okay.
I just thought 7 might bring out what they might have served on, what, you know, if they had served on any committees or any organizations or whatever, but that's fine with me. If we want to dump it, that's fine.
Okay. It sounds like we're on exit.
All right. Okay.
But can I say something?
Sure. Go ahead.
But I appreciate what Counselor Woodrow said. And I mean, I'm not advocating for adding a question, but maybe if that's what we want to know, that should be a more specific question, is to ask folks to talk about the ways that they've been involved or whatever.
I think that's asked in the application.
Okay.
When it talks about committees or any service to committees and public involvement, I think it's on there.
Yeah, I think it's on there too. Like I think
Okay.
we've got the information in the application. So maybe we put a pin in that one. If we don't feel like that's included, we can come back and address it. But I think it's in the application. So I think we're saying, Mary Bridget, we're saying cut 7,
Yep.
and then we're on to 8.
Okay. Since there are 6 city council positions, what do you believe are the advantages and disadvantages of collective decision-making and shared leadership?
Good question.
I think that's a keeper.
Okay.
All right.
I see a lot of head nods.
Okay. Number 9, councilors are elected citywide rather than by ward. What advantages or disadvantages do you see with that process?
Pish.
Strange as it sounds, I actually kind of like that question because I'd be looking for a specific answer in regards to, you know, because there is some very definite advantages compared to other cities that we get to enjoy and for specific reasons. And I would love to hear if they have thought about that and what their reasonings are behind that type of support or not support. That would be, I think, would be very telling for me.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to hear answers to that, because having the city right next door be by ward rather than citywide, it's a sharp contrast.
Corey.
I would also like to keep it, but for different reasons, because I think there are definite equity considerations around this one. So I would probably be looking for different answers, and we're probably giving people list, but I would still like to keep it for the same but different reasons.
That's a good thing.
So it's staying on the island.
Okay. Okay. And number 10, what is your greatest life accomplishment to date?
So
I think we can dump that one.
I think we can dump it.
And then
Leonard.
Thanks. Could I make one suggestion on number 8? It seems to me that starting it off saying, since there are 6 city council positions, it's sort of leading in a way. Would it be possible to change it to a statement, just saying there are 6 city council positions, period? And then the question, what do you believe are the advantages and disadvantages? It seemed, you know, this is a small thing, but it seems to me like if you started off with, since there are 6 city council positions, it's sort of leading them to say that there are advantages to working together. You know, I want to get their honest answer without sort of leading them toward the right answer.
Good point.
Joe.
which all of them will hopefully are listening in on this meeting will now know exactly what those are leading into or why we're asking that question already, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
There you go. So I guess there's
Good
no point in changing. I think it's good.
Transparency, right? It's all about transparency.
So I think we have to go back to 5 still.
Yes. 5 is, what do you like about Springfield and why?
Joe?
I would reword it and looking for a whole different thing is I would like to ask them, what would you say are Springfield's strengths and what would you say are Springfield's weaknesses, as opposed to that?
Leonard?
I'm not necessarily against broadening that question, but it does seem like it's very similar to what you would want to add, eliminate, or change about the city.
Right.
I mean, it
Maybe
seems like
just-
it's almost the same question now.
Maybe just narrow it down to what do you think are Springfield's strengths?
Corey?
Yeah. I don't have strong feelings either way. I am totally fine with what do you like best about Springfield and why, or I would even strengthen to say, like, what do you love about Springfield? Because I think that's part of what we're trying to get to is, you know, this sort of passion for Springfield and to
Right.
see how people talk about that. So that's what I have to say about that.
So, Mary Bridget, how many questions do we have with 5 in there?
Okay, check my math, but I think you might have 7 with 5 in there.
And is that including the one about city manager and staff?
No, that would be 8. So the one about city manager and staff, I'll just read it. I have a version here. Can you describe the relationship between the council and your understanding of the relationship between the council and staff?
Joe?
I think I would be more willing to dump 5 and substitute that with the question of regards to the relationships between the hierarchy of the organization. And I would prefer a total of 7, no more than 7 questions.
Okay. Yeah, I would be good with that.
Yeah.
Yes. Does anybody else have thoughts here?
I'm good with what Joe said.
Yeah, I think dumping 5 and replacing it with the staff question is where we're at. So that would
Okay.
give us 7.
So just so I'm clear, then looking at the questions would be on your list, questions 1, 2, 4. The staff relationship question will be in for number 5, and then questions 6, 8, and 9.
That's what I have as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you for doing that. I know it's really in the details, but our goal is to have you walk into those interviews feeling prepared and knowing what your questions are going to be, so you can really focus and listen. So that's helpful. Okay, so that was just so I'm clear, we're set for interviews on the 16th, which is your Tuesday meeting after President's Day, and then the 22nd. And then that will be interviewing all candidates based on these questions. So the revised questions, the choices will be in your packet. So you'll have those. And then you'll be ready to do the interviews then. It'll take those 2 meetings. And then the last process thing I had to talk about was voting. If you wanted to talk about it, you're scheduled to deliberate on March 1st. So we would have time to talk about it that night as well. But if you have questions about that or suggestions or how you want to work that, we could also talk about that now.
Joe?
I'd prefer to cover it right before we do it, just so, I mean, we don't have to not cover it now, but I think it would be wise to do it right before we do it, so it's fresh in my, at least in my mind.
So the way that I'm hearing the schedule is two groups of interviews. We hit the first, and then it's going to be straight into a regular session, and then we'll cover the voting, and then proceed to deliberate and vote.
I think that's right, but I want to confirm with AJ and Nancy to make sure that that works schedule-wise. But that's what I'm thinking we're working toward.
Leonard?
I don't want to drag this out unduly, but I remember the process that we used for city manager, and we had like 10 candidates that we boiled down to in the first cut. I'm wondering if it might be possible to have 2 cuts. I mean, if it might be possible to narrow it down from 8 to like 4, and then possibly have another set of questioning at that point, and then make our selection that way.
I don't,
I don't think so.
no.
So I don't think there's going to be needs to be a second interview. I just think that we may have to go through a cutting process to get down to a list that's manageable, but I don't know that we're going to cut it. It sounds like everybody's in that, that we're not going to cut, interview again, and then select. It would be, we might have to eliminate some folks so we have a smaller list to talk about and then deliberate and vote.
But at the same meeting.
Yes. And we don't know if the list is going to be, who knows, we could end up anywhere between everybody's fantastic and we want to hire them all, and all the way through we just see a clear winner together. So Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking this, and I think the way this process is laid out, I'm comfortable. I believe I'm capable of calling out from there is who I think would be the best addition to the council. Based on these questions, I think they're all very, very good questions. And I think the amount of interviewing we've done and getting to know these people through this process, their applications, the conversations, et cetera, I feel I'm very capable of pulling out who I would be most comfortable to work with. It was actually, may not be the most comfortable for me to work with, but I think would be the best for the city. I'll put it that way. I'm always willing for a little bit of a challenge. That's fine.
I was thinking that by the time we got to the end of the second evening of interviews, we would probably have a pretty good idea as to where that cut or may not be. And we would probably be able to figure out what we want to do in the next meeting after that second set of interviews. I mean, just like you said, we could have all those candidates be ones that we're very interested in, and then we would have to go through the process that Mary Bridget described with a straw poll or whatever, however she described that. Or there may be 3 that absolutely floated to the top above all the others, and then we would be ready to just vote on those 3. So but at the end of the second evening of interviews, I think we probably will have a pretty good idea.
Leonard?
Well, if we're going to do it all in one meeting, I think it would make it paramount for us to consider public input before we make the selection, even begin the selection process. Would it be possible just to discuss what the public input was, say with the city manager or the city attorney? I mean, during the meeting, that would be part of the public process.
So Leonard, I'm not sure I'm actually following, because if we interview, we're gonna have one set of interviews, and then if I've got the schedule wrong, somebody correct me, then we're gonna end up waiting an entire week, and then we have the public meeting where we deliberate. So there's 3 total meetings involved, two work sessions where we interview, and then the next public meeting where we're deliberating, is what I heard.
Is what I was suggesting?
No, that's what I heard the plan was.
Right.
So a total of 3 meetings. Okay,
Right.
fine.
Yeah. Corey, and then I think Fish had his hand up too.
So 2 things. What I think I hear you saying, Counselor Stairs, you're saying, would there be a way to discuss any of the public comment that came in before the public meeting at a work session? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, my main concern is not really with chronology, whether it's before or during or after the interviews. It's more just that we do give due weight to what the public input is, and as far as as long as there's a discussion about what we've heard from our constituents, I don't have a problem with the process taking place the way we're describing right now.
Okay. So maybe like at the end of that second interview session or whatever, if there was a chance for us to create a little discussion space to talk about what we were hearing, or maybe, or am I making that up?
Or maybe we could just put the public commentary in the packet and make it part of the discussion.
Well, it would be part
Okay.
of the packet.
Yeah.
It would automatically be part of the packet. And I would be concerned that we did at the end of the second interview, because if people in the public have comments about the people that were involved in the second interview, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to comment. So having it part of the packet, I think, is maybe the best way to go.
Pish had his hand up. Pish.
Yeah, I think the information, I would like to just see the information come in. People have comments, they can send it into the city manager's office, and we can get that sent by way of packet to us, so we can all read it at our own time. And if we wanted further information or cause for pause, whatnot, we can make that known. But I would like to get it with the packet, so we have the public input, during the decision-making process. I have no problem with that at all.
And I would think that we're not going to just rush in and vote, that there will be some discussion, at the meeting the first. Corey?
Correct.
Perfect. And then my piece was, I know we've been doing a really great job of this the last couple public meetings, but just to make sure that we give everybody who wants to say something time. So if we're gonna, not let people weigh in on questions or whatever, if we just make sure that if 20 people show up and they want to say something about that we give them the time to do that, and we take the time to listen. It's my opinion.
No, I think noted, and I think we would follow the same rules that we would at any other city council meeting, where if, when we hit that 20-minute mark, right, like it's up to the discretion of the council if they want to continue, or, they want to cut it off at that point. So we can figure that out the first. Joe?
And we can get more in by just shortening the time. Our neighboring city, again, allows 2 minutes per person. And we give 33% more time to every individual during these meetings. And that's something we need to consider. We want to hear from more people, but we need to make it amicable for everyone, including the other people that want to speak. Instead of cutting people off, we can add 33% more people and their opinions by shortening the time in which they talk. And it's not eliminating anybody. They just need to give us executive summaries of what their concerns are. And I think you can do that in a 2-minute period.
Okay.
I think that's something we need to think about.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Mary Bridget, is there other direction that you need?
I think I got what I need. I just want to confirm with Nancy and AJ if they had anything else that they were looking for, other information.
This is Nancy. I don't at this moment. I think we just need to talk about the logistics of the upcoming, the 3 upcoming meetings that we have. I'm looking at right now, February 16th is slated to have 30 minutes on regular session on this topic. February 22nd is a work session for 30 minutes. And March 1st would be a regular session for 30 minutes. So in theory, if you wanted to take a work session, wouldn't ordinarily have public comment. So that would be February 22nd.
But the public would have an opportunity to comment the first before we deliberated, as well as have an additional week to submit written comment.
Correct. The public would have the opportunity to comment on February 16th and again on March 1st.
Okay. And then maybe Friday we can talk about how much time we've got allocated to this. If there's 8 people, 7 questions, and an hour of interview time, it feels like it's going to be a little tight.
Yes, we will need to adjust the agenda. We can talk about that on Friday.
Perfect. Anything else?
Not for me. I appreciate your input tonight. It was helpful.
So one other question, Mary Bridget. The plan would be whoever we select the first, right? Then you're going to administer the oath at that point. So, okay. So it'd be nice to get the person here and installed by the first, so we can do a bunch of great things.
Mm-hmm.
Steve.
Oh, you can see me. I don't have all you guys on here. I only have one picture. I haven't said anything because you guys are doing fine. So that's good.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Steve, seal of approval. All right, great, everybody. I think that was it. You got one more thing, Mary Bridget? Oh, all right. I'm going to adjourn us. Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Good night.